Welcome back, everyone. Ready to wrap up our deep dive into Formula G. We've covered a lot of ground already, from the 9 steps themselves to all sorts of practical tips.
But now we're getting to the good stuff, right? We're looking at why Formula G is making such waves. Why are so many startups using it to really shake things up in the business world?
It's all about results, isn't it? And one of the biggest results we keep seeing is those unicorn companies.
Yeah.
The ones hitting that billion-dollar valuation.
Unicorns. Remember when they were actually rare, like mythical creatures?
Our sources say back in 2013, there were just 39 unicorns worldwide. That's when the term was coined.
Fast forward to 2021, and there are over 600. I mean, that's a huge shift, a real explosion of billion-dollar startups. So what happened? Why are we seeing this unicorn boom?
Well, according to the research, there are two big drivers. First, it's those disruptive companies, the ones with those disruptive propositions.
Those are the game changers, right? The ones that come in and challenge the status quo.
Exactly. And I think the best example is Amazon, starting in a garage,
Yeah.
and look at them now, completely changed the way we shop.
Yeah, Amazon's a classic. Their idea was actually pretty simple. Make almost anything you can think of available online.
Yeah.
Make it convenient, make it easy, give people tons of choices. But it was disruptive, and look where they are now, valued at over $1.5 trillion.
Talk about disruption paying off.
For sure. But here's the thing. Disruption alone isn't enough. You need something else to really take off.
And that's where the second driver comes in.
Yep. Technology. Think about it. So many of those recent unicorns, they're tech-driven companies.
It's not just about having a great idea anymore.
Right. You need technology to scale that idea, to grow fast and reach a global audience. Our sources actually pointed out something really interesting. In 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic, 11 Indian startups achieved unicorn status.
It's pretty surprising. The pandemic was tough on so many businesses. What was different about those companies?
Well, a lot of them capitalized on the shift to digital. Everything was moving online, and these startups were ready for it. Like GoStudent, for example.
GoStudent.
They're an edtech company based in Vienna. Basically, they offer online tutoring. And as traditional schooling went virtual, well, their services were suddenly in high demand.
Makes sense. Timing is everything. Right?
Absolutely. And it feels like Formula G helps startups be adaptable, ready to leverage those shifts in the market.
So let's do a quick recap of those 9 steps, sort of like a roadmap for navigating this crazy business world.
Always good to refresh, right?
Okay, so it starts with the basics. Having a clear mission, a strong vision for the future, and a good understanding of your strengths and weaknesses, that whole SWOT analysis thing.
Then we talked about building the right team, recognizing the power of people, and understanding those informal connections, the relationships that often lead to big breakthroughs.
Oh yeah, those informal groups. And then there was the reverse organizational structure. I'll admit that one sounded a little strange at first.
Right, but it's actually pretty simple. It's about empowering employees at every level, creating a culture where information flows freely, making everyone feel valued, and giving them the chance to contribute their ideas.
So it's less about rigid hierarchies and more about collaboration.
Exactly, and that ties into the next step, transparency, both within the company and with your customers.
Being upfront and honest, it builds trust.
Which is crucial, especially in today's world where information is everywhere. You can't hide anything. Consumers want to support companies that are open and authentic.
Okay, so we've got the foundation. A strong team, transparent culture. What comes next in the Formula G roadmap?
Marketing. Getting your message out there, both internally and externally. Making sure your team is just as passionate about your product or service as your customers are.
And then, of course, there's financial discipline. Can't forget that.
The not-so-fun part, but definitely essential if you want to build a lasting business.
It's about making smart decisions with your money. Not getting carried away with unplanned expenses, having a solid risk management plan, being prepared for the unexpected.
Which happens a lot in the startup world. All right, let's see. We've got strong teams, transparency, marketing, finances. What's left?
The final piece of the puzzle is all about wisdom. Practical wisdom and financial wisdom. Recognizing that experience and knowledge are incredibly valuable. They help you make better decisions and navigate the complexities of the business world.
And that brings us to the fun part. Seeing all of this in action, let's dive into those recent success stories that show just how powerful Formula G can be when it's applied effectively.
Let's do it. This is the exciting part. So where do we start?
Well, the edtech and software sectors have been absolutely booming. Those were the real hotbeds for new unicorns in the past year.
Yeah, think about companies like Udemy, Course Hero, Quizlet. They all tapped into that huge demand for online learning and made education more accessible. And in the software world, you've got Figma, Podium, Notion, Atom Bank, all of them reaching incredible valuations.
And then there's Zoom. I mean, who could forget their meteoric rise? They went from a relatively unknown video conferencing platform to a household name during the pandemic.
Their valuation went through the roof. $3 billion. They were in the right place at the right time and absolutely seized the moment.
It shows how a company can be perfectly positioned to meet a need that people didn't even realize they had until circumstances changed. And Zoom was ready. They scaled up their infrastructure and met that sudden surge in demand head on.
Speaking of being ready, our sources also highlighted another interesting success story, Arrival Ltd.
Arrival Ltd.
They're a British electric vehicle company.
Oh, yeah, they're doing some cool stuff, not just with electric vehicles themselves, but their whole approach to manufacturing is really innovative. They're all about sustainability and using these microfactories. It's a much more decentralized way of producing things.
And it seems like investors are taking notice. They've already reached a valuation of $5.4 billion, definitely shaking things up in the automotive world.
You know, these examples are fantastic, but it's not just about hitting that magic billion-dollar mark.
Absolutely. It's about creating something valuable, making a real impact on the world.
And that's what I find so inspiring about this whole age of startups. It feels like there's so much opportunity out there, so much potential to solve problems and build something meaningful.
It is an exciting time to be an entrepreneur.
No doubt about it.
And that brings us to the heart of what we want to explore in this last part of our deep dive. What does all this mean for you? What about your own venture?
What kind of story do you want to tell the world? What impact do you want to create? Those are the big questions we'll be tackling after a quick break. Stay tuned.
We'll be right back.
It's funny, you know, when you look at all these successful companies, Formula G isn't some rigid recipe for success.
Yeah, it's more like a framework, right? Like a set of guidelines that allow for flexibility, for creativity.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Like having a toolbox full of really high-quality tools. But the skill is knowing which tool to use when and how to adapt those tools to different situations.
I like that analogy. And, you know, one of the tools that often gets overlooked is the power of those informal groups. We always talk about organizational structure, those formal hierarchies, but those casual connections, those collaborations that just happen organically, they can be so valuable.
Absolutely. Like those classic water cooler moments, people from different teams just bumping into each other, striking up a conversation. You never know where the next big idea is going to come from.
Exactly. And Formula G encourages us to embrace those interactions, not just to allow them to happen, but to actually nurture them, manage them, to recognize that they can spark innovation and boost morale.
It's about creating an environment where those serendipitous moments of connection can occur more naturally.
Right. And that's where that reverse organizational structure comes in, doesn't it? By empowering employees at all levels, encouraging them to share their ideas freely, you create a much more dynamic and agile organization.
It really does turn that traditional pyramid structure on its head. Instead of decisions only flowing from the top down, you have this much more collaborative approach where everyone has a voice.
And that's so important in today's fast-paced business world. Our sources emphasized how often employees have the best insights into what's working and what's not. They're the ones on the front lines dealing with customers, seeing things from a different perspective.
It's about tapping into that collective intelligence, creating a culture where everyone feels valued and empowered to contribute their ideas.
And that leads us right back to transparency. When employees feel like they're in the loop, like they understand the company's goals and challenges, they're going to be much more engaged and committed.
Transparency isn't just about internal communication, though. It's also about being open and honest with your customers.
Right. Today's consumers are savvy. They do their research. They want to know what a company stands for, what its values are, how it operates.
They have access to so much information these days with social media, online reviews. Companies can't afford to be anything less than transparent.
It all comes down to trust, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Transparency builds trust, and trust is essential for any successful business. It's the foundation for strong relationships with your employees, your customers, and your investors.
It's interesting, you know, all these principles we've talked about, embracing those informal groups, fostering a culture of transparency, they all seem to work together to create a really positive and thriving work environment.
And that's one of the key takeaways from Formula G. It's not just a list of things to check off. It's about understanding how these principles interact, how they all contribute to creating a truly sustainable and scalable business.
It's about building a company culture that reflects your values, and encourages growth and innovation at every level.
Exactly. And I think that's what sets those truly successful startups apart. It's not just about the product or service they offer. It's about the people, the culture, the values that drive their success.
So it's not just a formula for growth. It's a formula for building a company that people are proud to be a part of, a company with a real purpose.
You said it perfectly. Formula G is about creating a company that's profitable and purpose-driven, a company where everyone feels valued and empowered to do their best work.
And as we wrap up this deep dive into Formula G, we want to leave you with one final thought to ponder. If this is truly the age of startups, what's your story going to be? What unique mark are you going to make on the world with your venture?
What kind of impact do you want to create? What legacy will you leave behind? Those are big questions, but they're worth asking as you embark on your own entrepreneurial journey.
It's been a pleasure exploring Formula G with you and diving into these inspiring stories of successful startups.
We hope you found this deep dive informative and motivating.
That's all for today. Thanks for listening. You know, it's amazing to me how this age of startups has really become a global thing. We're seeing unicorns popping up in all kinds of industries all over the world.
It's definitely not just Silicon Valley anymore. And you know what I find really encouraging? A lot of these startups, they're not just chasing profits. They're driven by a real sense of purpose.
Yeah, like they want to make a difference. They're tackling social issues, focusing on sustainability, really trying to have a positive impact.
It's like a whole new generation of entrepreneurs are using business to do good in the world. They're showing that you can be successful and make a difference at the same time.
It's a powerful combination for sure. So as we wrap up this deep dive into Formula G, let's take a minute to think about what we've learned.
Sounds good.
We went through those 9 steps, from building a solid foundation to putting together a great team. We talked about transparency, financial discipline, all of that. And then we looked at those incredible success stories. Companies like Amazon, Zoom, Arrival Ltd., they've all used Formula G to achieve some pretty remarkable things.
Definitely inspiring, but they also offer some really valuable lessons for anyone out there who wants to build their own successful venture.
It all starts with that initial spark, that idea, that drive to create something new, to solve a problem, to meet a need.
And then it takes courage, determination, and a willingness to keep learning, to adapt as you go. Formula G can give you a roadmap, but you have to create your own journey.
And that's what makes this whole age of startups so exciting, right? It's full of possibilities. If you've got the passion, the drive, and a good plan, there's really no limit to what you can achieve.
Well said. It's been a pleasure diving into Formula G with you and exploring all these inspiring success stories.
Thanks for joining us. We hope this deep dive was informative and, more importantly, that it gave you some motivation for your own entrepreneurial adventures. Good luck out there, and remember, the future is yours to create. Thanks for listening.